Ours is not to question, but to rejoice in their service, for they are perfection.
I would much rather be a Christian nationalist than a atheistic globalist from that standpoint. If you're going to contrast those extremes, yes, I believe in Jesus and I love America.
Guess what, gang? I love America too. Hell, I half suspect that I love it more. Welcome back to the channel. I came across this idiot Ray who has a 9-part series about why Christian nationalism's a good thing. Lucky for us, each part's only about 5 minutes long, and he basically says the same thing in each one. Let's get into it and break down Ray's ridiculousness. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Roll the tape.
Welcome to Ecclesia Principles.
As a struggling actor, I need all the breaks that I can get.
A biblical strategy for believers to engage in God's design for government.
Am I allowed to riff?
With Ray Eppard.
Liberty bibbity.
The goal of Christian Nationalist is to rewrite the lessons of histories and make the United States a Christian theocracy. Our founding fathers knew that this was a bad idea.
Hello, glad you could join us again today. This week, we're going to look at something that is becoming much more of a hot topic.
That about wraps up my introduction. Now, are there any questions?
And that is Christian nationalism. And today we're going to address the issue, is Christian nationalism a good thing?
What is Christian nationalism? I found this article from Christianity Today, and it says, Christian nationalism is the belief that the American nation is defined by Christianity, and that the government should take active steps to keep it that way. Popularly, Christian nationalists assert that America is and must remain a Christian nation, not merely as an observation about American history, but as a prescriptive program for what America must continue to be in the future.
And many people are saying it's a bad thing. But we actually need to understand a little bit of the history of it. And in one reality, prior to about 2 years ago, there was no such thing as Christian nationalism.
What the fuck did you just say?
You gotta love it when they say the quiet part out loud, as if since the formation of the Union, Christians haven't used politics to further their agenda and continue to do so today. These nationalists are well-funded, and other Christian figures won't call them out on the dangers of what they're advocating for. In all 5 parts of Ray's series, he doesn't once mention what he wants from all this. He just feels the world should be run by white, English-speaking Christians who are biblical literalists and think that toll roads should pay their churches tithings and that schools should be run by nuns and only Christians can be elected to official positions within a government.
It wasn't anything that was discussed. It wasn't anything that was talked about. It's been kind of created.
Horseshit!
And if you would, it's largely been created to be a boogeyman.
That's what we call it, the boogeyman fucking excuse. There is no boogeyman.
That you need to stay away from that.
That's goddamn right.
And it's designed to scare people off.
So Ray's sage advice is to bury your head in sand. We don't need to analyze this garbage. I mean, after all, the word Christian's in it, so it has to be the best thing for everyone always. As an atheist, I'm all about religious freedom. Ray of Sunshine wants everyone to think like he does, make it illegal to think otherwise. The problem is not everyone, even Christians, can live up to Ray's expectations of what a Christian should be. Ray's beliefs force him to out his own in-group, and that's fucked up and destined to fail.
One of the things you have to understand is when you hear terms that you're not familiar with and people talk about how terrible they are.
Said the guy who's never defined anything, wants you to sign on the dotted line in blood, blinded by shade.
What they're trying to do is to make sure you avoid accepting something.
What are you talking about, Ray? I want people aware of Christian nationalism and what you all stand for. You actually just told people they shouldn't care about authoritarian propaganda that's inherently divisive and perpetuates dogma that's not evidently true. With every 2 steps forward we take, we're just 1 step back from chattel slavery, witches being drowned, and stoning Walmart workers for working on Sundays.
They have an agenda in doing that, and it's not really about whether something is good or if something is bad. It's really, they just don't want you to go there. They want to discourage that.
It's true. I don't want you to go there. Why? Because it's a bad idea. And the majority of people are either uneducated or uninformed. Project 2025 is a Christian manifesto that wants to do away with the Department of Education, to fire tens of thousands of civil servants and replace them with unqualified loyalists. They want to take control of the FBI and the DOJ, cut funding for climate change and national health programs. They want to cut Medicare and Medicaid and outlaw all abortion and birth controls. They seek to criminally punish all of the LGBTQ community and do away with diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. They want the DOJ to prosecute anti-white racism. These sick fucks seek to increase capital punishment for lesser crimes with speedier execution, and that's just a short list of what they've got written down in black and white.
You are wasting your time with this garbage. Now go to bed!
And if you would, I'll throw this out. I would encourage you to Google a speech or an article, one of the two. I read it in an article.
Eat this.
Ray could have easily edited out that Freudian slip, but no, he's going to go with a speech he read in an article, as if that legitimizes his appeal to authority. But the best part is, he probably read this garbage on Fox or OAN.
But I think it was something that was delivered in a speech by Senator Josh Hawley on the subject of Christian nationalism.
This jerkwad makes Lord Voldemort look like a pacifist. Do it. Google him. Find out for yourself he's a vile, disturbed, disgusting piece of shit who says frightening and awful stuff about other people. He has no qualms about lying.
From this day forth, you put your faith in me.
Some will say now that I am calling America a Christian nation. And so I am. And some will say that I am advocating Christian nationalism, and so I do.
This is one of them idiot assholes who's in cahoots with the Heritage Foundation. You know, that Project 2025 trash that must not be named. He's basically a bigoted chatbot that spews out as many buzzwords as possible.
Here's what's going on, Laura. You've got the Democrats who want to turn the entire military into a giant trans experiment. They want to force women to accept men in their sports. They want to turn biological women into men. And then you got a whole group of Republicans who just want more people to fight all these wars they want to get us into. And the rest of the country, the normal people, are like, leave our daughters alone. This is insane stuff. I've got a 3-year-old daughter.
So yeah, anyone who'd cite that shithead's rhetoric as a good idea really needs to take a long look in the mirror.
This is size 10 chaos.
I come across this preacher man, and he says that Christian nationalism is the opposite of Christianity.
And he sent me this. It's the top reasons beer is better than religion.
We're not going to have time to get into everything that he dealt with, but it's actually the best thing I've ever read on that subject.
Number one, when you have beer, you don't knock on people's doors trying to give it away.
Ray brings up he who must not be named a couple of times in this series, but he never has the time to tell us why he wants to take him to the Yule Ball.
Number two, there are laws against forcing beer on minors who can't think for themselves.
I'm almost positive the only way Holly was elected is that people confused the name with Holloway. What do you think of that guess gallop of his? Ray, too, is a master of the segue. Check this out.
It's actually the best thing I've ever read on that subject. because everything prior to the Reformation, it was kingdoms.
Man getting bit by an alligator and he screams.
It was kings, queens, if you would, dictators.
Number 3, nobody's ever been burned at the stake because of their favorite brand of beer.
Bottom line, from that standpoint. And with the Reformation, with a new light of Christianity coming into the earth,
What is wrong with me?
it began to affect how people saw government.
Number 4, you don't have to wait more than 2,000 years for a second beer.
And the bottom line, it began to move government away from kingdoms to representative governments, democratic republics.
And last, if you've devoted your life to beer, there are groups to help you.
It began to push things that way. So if you would, I want to read from Genesis chapter 1, verse 26.
The earth will end only when God declares it's time to be over. Man will not destroy this earth. This earth will not be destroyed by a flood.
Before Ray reads his Bible verse, I want to point out that Athens was a democratic republic 500 years before Paul came along and told them about Jebus. The Protestant Reformation in the 1600s had millions of Catholics converting and taking away money and political power with them. I could get into the finer points, but why? Ray never does. I took a European Studies class at university, and on the day of the finals review, somebody raised their hand and asked the professor, "What's the garment?" And he flipped out. And the truth is, none of us knew what in the hell he was talking about the garment, but he was saying government. So the entire semester, none of us knew what the hell he was talking about when he was saying garment, but we didn't want to ask him what he was saying. And finally, on the day before the final, somebody had the balls to ask, "What in the hell's the garment?" He kept saying it over and over, the garment. The garment, and he wrote it on the chalkboard, and he goes, Government. He's like, the garment.
Chapter 1, verse 26, verse very familiar to all of us.
Everything before the word but is horse shit.
But it says, then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth.
You see? You believe it now?
Genesis 8, verse 21 and 22. Never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood, and never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done.
He said, let them have dominion. If you would, Christian nationalism, and again, to me, when it first came out, I'm like, started looking into it because it just wasn't really a thing.
Well, the truth is usually just an excuse for lack of imagination.
I think Ray's being genuine and had no idea Christians are trying to take over the garment. And now that he's figured it out, he's like, man, that's a fine idea. That's a mighty fine idea.
But in looking at it, if that is what people are going to call biblical application of truth to government, then okay, fine. Let's call it Christian nationalism.
Ray thinks that this Bible verse gives him and his idiotic cult the right to rule the world. He doesn't care what it's called. Who cares if it goes against our country's founding document that he's never read that says we're tired of this bullshit? But Ray and his other morons who think like him miss the good old days.
But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty
It's not that kind of duty
to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
I have found this reading of the Declaration on a Christian channel. Why? Because it uses the word creator, and if you read between the lines, they were definitely talking about Jeebus, right? See, Ray's hubris is thinking that they were talking about his special guy when they were talking about everyone's special guy. Anyway, let's get into another of Ray's videos. Keep in mind, I don't edit much out, so if Ray sounds like an idiot jumping around, that's because he is.
With certain unalienable rights. And if you would, I've heard other people use this, I don't know who the first one was, but from that,
we must save you from yourselves.
I would much rather be a Christian nationalist than a atheistic globalist from that standpoint.
Don't you understand?
I'm not sure what a global atheist is, but what I do know is the Bible limits or completely takes away these so-called unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness from cover to cover in the form of slavery, misogyny, and a plethora of ways to delete the opposition, take their land, their women, and their livestock. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe.
This is why you created us.
If you're going to contrast those extremes, yes, I believe in Jesus and I love America. If that makes me a Christian nationalist, then okay, fine.
The preacher man says it's the end of time.
Being a Christian who loves America does not a Christian nationalist make.
There is nothing Christian about Christian nationalism. It is the worship of power. Social power, economic power, political power, in the name of Christ.
Because I love God, I love my nation.
My logic is undeniable.
Yes, Vicky, undeniable.
I get the feeling Ray's just trying to be one of the cool kids. He has all this school spirit and doesn't realize he's cheering for the wrong team.
They haven't got a clue.
Ray and his ilk are full of it. They're champion anti-democratic authoritarianism and limiting rights based on creed, color, and nationality. Earlier, Ray spoke of terms, and I'm wondering if he looked up nationalism. Would the meaning of it hit him like a ton of bricks?
It is a recognition of individuals, Genesis 1:26, having dominion, that we have an authority. We have a jurisdiction.
We ain't doing nothing wrong and you ain't got no jurisdiction up here.
I've said it in my other videos that I tend to paint Christians with a broad brush, but I don't mean all Christians, but Christians like Ray sit here and says God gave man guardianship over the earth, and they don't give two shits about it. They speak out against renewable energy and advocate defunding anything that has to do with preserving this so-called great responsibility we've been put in charge of. Not as a reward, but a punishment. They could care less about the fishes, the rivers, the seas. The Supreme Court of the United States, made up of right-wing Christians, has already limited the Environmental Protection Agency's ability to do their job. They blocked the Good Neighbor rule that protects downwind states from pollution. They rolled back the Clean Air Act and did away with their ability to regulate wetlands. Does anyone think these assholes are doing a good job?
Good job.
We have a legal right to say about what's happening.
And you will respect my authority.
Christian nationalism, if you would, is a good thing from this perspective, if that's how they're going to label the biblical application of government.
You knocked my tooth out! Well, a cult makes a heavy firearm, that's a fact.
Then at that point, yes, it is a good thing. It has given us representative government. It has given us separation of powers. The book of Isaiah is what inspired them to the separation of powers. With this, you get to understand, and in all honesty, this is a part of the attack of the purpose behind Christian nationalism.
Son of a bit!
If Christian nationalists believe that God gave our rights and not the government, and that being a bad thing in their minds, then the overwhelming majority of our founding fathers were Christian nationalists.
For fuck's sake, Ray, just because someone thinks a creator gave them rights, it doesn't make the founding fathers Christian nationalist.
That's not how this works.
Then the overwhelming majority of our founding fathers were Christian nationalists.
Why is this such a huge pill for Christians to swallow? The Establishment Clause says the government shall not establish any religion. Also, I was curious about the separation of power in Isaiah, and it goes a little something like this. The Lord is our judge, our lawgiver, our king. And check out the emperor's new bling.
Because they wrote it in the Declaration of Independence.
Plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people.
To consider the possibility that God does not like you. In all probability, he hates you.
He is, at this time, transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation.
What has Christian nationalism given us? And I'm basing this off of an MSNBC panelist who said Christian nationalists believe that our rights are given to us by God and not the government.
Silly woman, said the reptile with a grin. You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in.
Dude, it's we the people, and if these treasonous rebels would have failed, they'd have been hung as insurrectionists. These were great thinkers, and they didn't use the word God or Jesus. All these assholes have is the word creator being used with the word divine, ignoring everything in between and after. It's so ridiculous. It's full of shit. Get over it, dude. Your religion didn't make this country. This country was made in spite of your religion.
So when I heard that, I thought, well, I must be a Christian nationalist.
This business of fulfilling the Declaration of Independence is a difficult struggle, but it is also an ennobling struggle. Jefferson called the Declaration an expression of the American mind. It is why this nation is so great and why I am so proud to be an American.
That's goddamn right.
Conglomerated mess that a lot of people call it today.
I speak.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Wait, what was that? I thought it was and always will be a Christian nation.
Conglomerated mess that a lot of people call it today.
Misa Kochata Pinks.
But if you define separation of church and state by the First Amendment.
Of course, that's where we define it, Ray. That's where it's all laid out in black and white. You know, like how else would you define it?
That is something that was given to us by people that were applying scriptural principles to government. It gave us that separation of church and state.
Damn, Ray, watch out for that pit of used copium needles. You should seriously try to avoid that shit, dude. Earlier, Ray mentioned multiple realities, and in this particular version, he's lost his mind. The founding fathers got the separation of powers idea from this French philosopher called Baron de Montesquieu. These dudes were founding a nation, not having a circle jerk with Jesus. Seriously, Ray, take a history class.
We have been looking at jurisdictional government, the different jurisdictions that God has established. Currently, we're looking at the jurisdiction of the family. The word jurisdiction, the first part, juris, basically means legal or lawful. Diction, speech.
That incoherent garbage is from a video series where Ray is under the delusion that every child should be and can grow up with their loving biological mummies and daddies, and that the children have no rights beyond what the church grants them. You know, honor your mother and father or be deleted. I was, and for lack of a better word, blessed to have grown up in a nuclear family. Ray's impossible standards, however, are unreasonable down here in this part of reality.
Who has the right to say? Who has the legal authority to say, to speak, to decide an issue? That's what jurisdiction basically means.
I just found out Ray teamed up with Faith Landmark Ministries, and they have an international fitness program.
Introduce newcomers to the body of Christ. If you're looking to get active, lose weight, boost your health, or just get your adrenaline going,
they also have an app where you can keep track of how much money you've given them.
Go Harvesting. Your missions giving enables FLM to financially support their outreach efforts.
And my personal favorite, Ray's promotional video.
With guest speaker Ray Eppert. All services August 9th at Faith Landmarks Ministry.
Now, the basis of our scripture for this is Genesis 1:26, which really establishes so many things.
This is the fucking guy who could read Exodus and have us invade Canada because it sounds like Canaanites, and then we put all the men and boys to the sword and marry the sexy virgins, and then go around and tell everybody we cut down all the maple trees, but we've got this serve big goodness to get rid of. You interested?
The religion and the government was tied so closely together that people would lose their lives sometimes when government would change because they were of the wrong religion.
My name I cannot sign. Why? Do you mean to deny this confession when you are free?
Oh, horseshit, Ray. Authoritarian garment atrocities are always against their own citizens first. Ray's suggesting that the U.S. Gov is shitting on Christians while blissfully being ignorant of his double standard, where he's advocating for change that shits all over our legal and moral system, taking away religious freedoms and the freedom of speech, and prosecute and possibly executing anyone he deems unworthy. These morons look backward to the Dark Ages and tell people we were better off because Christian.
True separation of church and state, as the First Amendment talks about, it says it this way. Now, I'll read to you that First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof.
Ray just read two cogent sentences, and what do you want to bet that he couldn't follow along?
So you see, in this, religion is something that government is not supposed to dictate, but at the same time, it is not to impede it. What we're dealing with much in our country today is the impeding and the removal of religion.
Really? Horse shit.
That's not separation of church and state.
Are you crazy? Or just plain stupid?
Come on, Ray. The Constitution says Congress shall make no laws that establish a religion or prohibit the free exercise of religion. The standard set by the Supreme Court used to be this thing called the Lemon Test, but now the Supreme Court's chucked that out the window and opened the door to these lower courts to decide based on historical practices and understanding, giving these nationalists leeway to put their garbage in public schools. But they still play the victims. They act like they're the ones being oppressed and isolated and segregated.
That's not separation of church and state. That's the state dictating what you are allowed to believe and what you're allowed to communicate in the public square.
Why is it no one ever believes me, even when I'm telling the truth?
Again, just his persecution complex showing, playing the victim card. Ray's just pissed we have some ability to keep his apocalyptic death cult out of our government and public schools, but what really burns his ass is the fact that we can somewhat protect our children from his insane dogma and shit. He's a terrible person. You're a terrible person, Ray. You're disgusting. Your religion's disgusting. What you want the world to become is disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself. Fuck off, I'm done with you. I want to shout out a special thanks to everyone who's subscribed, watches, and leaves your awesome support in my comments. Even the opposing side says they love me and think about me when they're on their knees. Y'all are the best, and I'll see you in the next one. It's about science, and it proves the Bible, because carbon is made up of 666, and we breathe nitrogen to stay alive, and it's 777. I shit you not. It's probably a little bit more ridiculous than this. It's probably a little more ridiculous than this video, so I hope to see you on the next one.
Are you sure that's the point, Doctor? Of course. What else could it be? That you should never tell the same lie twice.